This is part 2 of the explanation of the updated original stand idea called Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Here, we're going to talk about weaknesses, the requiem, and then also other potential tweaks we could make to this whole thing holistically. And let me know if you think they're fair or not, because I think some of them make sense, but I don't know if they're fair. Let me explain what it does. First, it has 2 abilities, and visually the stand is split right down the middle. The first side is called Beautiful Dark, and Beautiful Dark can it can turn it off. It can turn off any one of your 5 senses. That stand is short range, but essentially if it touches you, literally your sense of whatever I choose just becomes static. That's it. That's all you perceive through that sense. The other half ability is called Twisted Fantasy, and Twisted Fantasy has the ability to take one of your senses and move it so that it is experienced from a different perspective. So for example, if I took your sense of vision, I could take it from you and like touch this wall, and then you would see from the perspective of the wall, right? Okay, that's the second ability. So Beautiful Dark and Twisted Fantasy. If you haven't watched both videos, go watch the other one, because I think I break those things down really well in there. But okay, here we go. Weaknesses, right? It's weak. It's already weak because of its short range and because its abilities can only be used one side at a time. So it's not like you have like a full double-sided body that's like landing blows or hitting or touching an enemy. It's only the one side that's necessary for whatever power is being utilized in that current moment. But that also, it could be incredibly discombobulating or disorienting for another stand user, because you have 2 separate like side half slit in half freaking stands that are coming out at you to try to accommodate for, and you could use them to distract from whatever the situation was. Like, you can only use one at a time, but they could both materialize. So you could, if the enemy user starts to understand like how your power works or how to work around it, you can have both sides be active or visible, so they can't quite tell like what you're going to hit them with to continue to throw them off. Okay, cool. I think we've explained that well enough. Let's see if anybody has any other feedback. Okay, here we go. The requiem. For the requiem, this is what I originally had in mind. People said the requiem doesn't necessarily need to be a reasonable or straightforward evolution of an ability, but I think for this particular stand, it makes sense for their ability to evolve. And if you don't like the idea of this being called their requiem, then maybe interpret it instead as their like over heaven version or something, like just some way that the user's ability evolves, and this is what it would evolve to. 1, I think naming convention wise, what would be the sickest thing ever is when it evolves, instead of its abilities being called Beautiful Dark and Twisted Fantasy, it is instead Dark and Twisted and Beautiful Fantasy, which would be freaking sick, okay? And visually, because normally the stand is split in 2 and it only operates in 2 halves, like it's only half of an ability, or it's only half of a materialization when it comes forth. Now, when it evolves, each stand splits and forms its final whole body. So now the user basically has 2 separate stands, which not only increases its usability and strength kind of by definition, because technically speaking, they kind of could hit you with 2 attacks that are physical and now slightly more powerful, because they're not only half bodies hitting you anymore, but like full bodies hitting you. So that helps add a bit of a strength buff to the stand. Okay, now to explain the abilities. So Dark and Twisted now, previously it could only take one, or can only turn off one of your 5 senses, your 5 perceptive senses. Instead, now it can do up to all 5. And other people explain that they're like more than 5 senses, like other than like sight, touch. I understand that, and we'll include that here. So now Beautiful Dark can turn off, or sorry, Dark and Twisted can turn off any sense that you have like as an existing being. And again, that doesn't only apply to humans, but it could apply to like any living thing, which I think is pretty crazy. Then for Beautiful Fantasy, this is a bit more difficult, because Beautiful Fantasy, like a lot of people have suggested like essentially like reality manipulation, but that gets super OP at a point. I think people only think that that's reasonable because Doctor Strange has that and he never uses it to any advantage in real way. But if somebody was really smart and used that all the time, it would just be way too strong. The way I thought about trying to use that is maybe it is like a area of effect reality manipulation, but it can't last super long and the area of effect isn't particularly large. Or similar to the show Baki, at a point, fighters get to a space where they are losing so badly that their mind will literally start showing them the hallucination of them in the fight that they're in, but if they were winning. So it's crazy because you don't even need to be like directly engaged with the fighter anymore. They're just like throwing punches because their mind is just showing them something that's like completely unreal. So Twisted Fantasy could grant you, I consider it a blessing almost, but Twisted Fantasy could grant you the luxury of perceiving whatever reality you wanted to perceive in a given time and moment, which I think is kind of, and maybe, yeah, I like that. And I think a really interesting way to like execute this amongst like one person, and I think is like really dramatic and crazy, but like imagine like a Giorno moment when he like goes up against Diavolo and such, and they're like overcoming the villain. If this stand user was like the main character or something, dude, look, he could use like the evolved version, Dark and Twisted, to steal all your senses, basically make you a vegetable like that. And then the user, out of their mercy, could use like their angelic stand to come and touch you and grant you the gift or the pleasure of at least experiencing a fantasy that is something that you would want to see, even though basically in the real world you're nothingness. It's like an endless just fantasy loop. And granted, this is probably that might be a similar ability from another character, another show. Let me know, because I'd love to watch that show. But I think that kind of makes sense for beautiful fantasies like Requiem ability. Like and that feels like it's really pretty strong. Granted, also people mention that with your Requiem ability, it's technically, again, it doesn't have to evolve like in a way that makes sense from the previous ability, but rather it's whatever the user needs it to be in the moment, which, okay, that makes sense. But I think that this still kind of fits. Like, I can't imagine having to need to overcome a problem where being able to turn someone into a vegetable essentially by touching them and or completely manipulating the reality so they only see what they like. I can't imagine how that wouldn't be able to help you achieve whatever your goal was. So I feel like it still works pretty well. That's it. I think that's just about everything I've got so far, and I think it's pretty well balanced if you watch both videos. Let me know if you have like any other details or additions or like tweaks for it, and if you're an artist, please still let me know if you like are thinking about an interesting visual for this. I still need somebody to help me kind of draw out what the stand user looks like, so I can do another video explaining what the stand user looks like. But I do also want to like solidify like this stand, because I think like we're getting somewhere that makes a lot of sense and that's really cool, and I think we're just about locked in, honestly. So tell me what you think. Please let me know in the comments whatever you want to do. I hope you're having a good day. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. This is